Ravi Sharma came to Dubai, chasing a future he could never afford back home. Aisha Khan lived behind closed gates, drowning in silence and privilege, and Imran Malik trusted loyalty more than suspicion, until one hidden affair quietly tied their lives together and turned ambition, desire, and trust into a scandal that destroyed everything they built. He arrived in Dubai carrying a small suitcase and years of quiet ambition. Coming from a modest town in India, he believed the city of glass towers and endless lights would give him what his homeland could not: steady income, respect, and a chance to support his family. The heat, the strict routines, and the unfamiliar culture were difficult at first, but he learned quickly. His job at a private trading company demanded long hours and absolute obedience. The owner was known as a disciplined man who valued loyalty above all else, and the worker made sure never to draw attention to himself. Days blended into nights as he followed the same path from shared labor, housing to the company office. He watched others rise and fall, some returning home in shame, others lost to exhaustion. He promised himself he would endure. His quiet nature earned him trust, and slowly, his responsibilities grew. He handled documents, deliveries, and personal errands without complaint. To his employer, he became invisible in the best possible way. Yet beneath this steady routine was a growing emptiness. He had no family nearby, no close friends, and little time for rest. Phone calls home were short and filled with expectation. Everyone believed he was succeeding. The pressure to live up to that belief weighed heavily on him. Nights were the hardest, filled with silence and thoughts he could not escape. Dubai offered opportunity, but it also offered temptation. Surrounded by wealth he could not touch and lives he could not live, he felt trapped between gratitude and resentment. He did not know it then, but this emotional isolation was the first crack in his carefully built discipline. In a city where every mistake could carry severe consequences, that crack would soon widen, setting the stage for a decision that would change everything. As months passed, his employer began assigning him tasks outside the office. These duties took him to the family villa, a place that felt distant from the crowded labor housing he returned to each night. The house stood quiet and immaculate, surrounded by high walls and guarded privacy. Inside, everything reflected wealth and order, yet there was an unmistakable sense of emptiness. The boss was rarely home, often away on business trips that lasted weeks. His absence left the house unusually silent. The boss's wife lived a life that appeared comfortable but isolated. She had staff for every basic need, yet little genuine human connection. Her days followed a predictable routine, filled with long hours and idle time. The workers' visits were meant to be brief and professional, but familiarity slowly replaced formality. Small exchanges during routine tasks became longer moments of shared presence. The quiet of the house seemed to draw them closer, creating a space where boundaries blurred without warning. The worker felt conflicted. Part of him knew the danger of being noticed in a place ruled by strict laws and unforgiving consequences. Another part felt seen for the first time since arriving in Dubai. The attention gave him confidence he had never known. He began to linger, inventing reasons to stay a little longer than required. Each visit weakened his sense of caution. What started as harmless closeness quietly crossed into secrecy. The house that once felt empty now carried tension and excitement. The worker convinced himself that the situation was under control, believing silence meant safety. He underestimated how quickly secrecy can become a trap. In that villa, far from public eyes, a hidden connection took shape, one that would soon pull both lives into a spiral neither fully understood. The hidden connection continued under the cover of routine. Each visit to the villa followed the same pattern, careful and controlled on the surface, reckless underneath. The worker became skilled at hiding his movements, adjusting schedules, and avoiding notice. He believed caution alone could protect him. At work, he acted as if nothing had changed, maintaining the image of a loyal and obedient employee. The double life drained him, but the secrecy also gave him a dangerous sense of power. Small changes began to appear. He became distracted during tasks and careless with time. His phone use increased, and his focus slipped. People around him noticed, even if they did not understand why. The boss, though often away, sensed distance during brief interactions. Trust, once solid, began to thin without clear explanation. The worker felt this shift and grew anxious, yet he continued. Fear no longer stopped him. It followed him everywhere instead. Inside the villa, the atmosphere changed as well. What once felt thrilling now carried tension. The silence felt heavier, filled with the risk of exposure. Every unexpected sound felt threatening. The worker started losing sleep, replaying worst-case outcomes in his mind. In a country where moral and legal rules are strict, the thought of discovery became terrifying. Despite the growing stress, he could not step away. The secret had wrapped itself around his identity. He was no longer just a laborer trying to survive. He was someone hiding a truth that could destroy him. He convinced himself that as long as no one spoke, nothing would happen. What he failed to realize was that secrets do not need voices to reveal themselves. Sometimes the body, behavior, and chance begin to speak on their own, slowly pulling hidden lives into the light. The turning point came without warning. The boss's wife began to feel unwell in ways that could not be ignored. At first, the symptoms seemed minor and easy to dismiss. Fatigue, sudden weakness, and recurring illness slowly took over her routine. Medical visits became more frequent, and concern replaced denial. The private comfort of the villa turned into a place of quiet fear as tests were ordered and results delayed. When the diagnosis finally arrived, it changed everything. HIV was confirmed through multiple examinations. The news shattered the controlled world she lived in. Doctors began tracing possible timelines, looking for how and when the infection could have occurred. Every detail of the past months suddenly mattered. Travel records, personal habits, and medical history were carefully reviewed. The truth formed quietly but clearly. The worker was called in for testing soon after. Fear consumed him as he waited for results he already suspected. The confirmation left no room for doubt. The secret relationship was no longer just a moral failure. It had become a medical crisis with serious legal consequences. What had been hidden behind walls and silence now existed in hospital records and official files. Panic spread quickly. The boss was still unaware, but the system around him was already moving. Health authorities were obligated to act, and confidentiality could only go so far. The worker realized that control had slipped completely out of his hands. His future in Dubai, his freedom, and even his safety were suddenly uncertain. The illness exposed more than infection. It revealed how fragile the illusion of secrecy had been from the beginning. One careless decision had connected multiple lives in a way that could never be undone. What started as a hidden affair now carried permanent consequences, marking the moment when secrecy collapsed and reality took full control. The situation unraveled rapidly once medical authorities became involved. What had been contained within hospital walls could not stay private for long. Reports were filed, timelines documented, and official procedures triggered without emotion or mercy. The boss was informed through formal channels, not rumors or suspicion. The revelation struck at the core of his carefully built life. Years of discipline, reputation, and social standing collapsed in a matter of hours, replaced by disbelief and humiliation. The worker was detained for questioning as part of standard procedure. His identity shifted instantly from trusted employee to central figure in a public health case. His movements were restricted, and his past was examined closely. Every detail of his life in Dubai, and before it, was pulled apart. The city that once symbolized opportunity now felt like a closed cage. Fear replaced ambition, and survival became his only focus. Inside the villa, the atmosphere turned cold and distant. The woman faced isolation as staff were dismissed and routines disrupted. Illness and shame combined, leaving no escape. Her social circle vanished, and the future she once took for granted disappeared. The comfort of wealth offered no protection from disgrace. News of the scandal spread quietly but effectively. In a place where image and control mattered deeply, silence carried judgment. The company distanced itself from the incident, and business partners withdrew. The boss's authority weakened, and his name became associated with scandal rather than success. The affair had ended, but its consequences continued to grow. 3 lives were now permanently altered. What began as secrecy fueled by loneliness had turned into exposure that spared no one. There was no victory, no escape, only the slow realization that one hidden mistake had destroyed everything built over years. The investigation moved forward with precision and urgency. Health officials and legal authorities worked together, following procedures that allowed little room for emotion or explanation. Medical records were reviewed in detail, establishing clear timelines of infection. Each appointment, test result, and reported symptom was logged carefully. The case was no longer about personal betrayal alone. It had become a matter of public safety. The worker's past came under intense scrutiny. Authorities examined his life before arriving in Dubai, including medical history and previous employment records. Tests suggested the infection had existed prior to the affair, raising serious questions about responsibility and disclosure. This discovery deepened the severity of the case. What initially appeared as mutual wrongdoing now carried the weight of negligence and risk to others. Travel movements, phone records, and work schedules were analyzed to remove any doubt. The investigation revealed patterns of secrecy and avoidance, confirming that the situation was not a single mistake but a series of choices. Every attempt to stay hidden added another layer of evidence. The worker's silence, once seen as caution, now appeared as deliberate concealment. The woman's actions were also examined, though the focus remained on how the disease had been transmitted. Authorities treated the case with clinical distance, but the consequences were deeply personal. Isolation orders, counseling requirements, and legal warnings followed. The reality of lifelong illness and legal exposure settled heavily on everyone involved. As the investigation progressed, the truth became impossible to escape. The affair had stopped being the center of the story. It was now a lesson in how secrecy, fear, and poor decisions can create damage far beyond personal lives. Each official document added weight to the realization that nothing could be undone and accountability was inevitable. The legal process unfolded swiftly once the investigation concluded. Authorities acted according to strict laws designed to protect public health and maintain order. The worker was formally charged, facing serious consequences that carried long-term impact. His status as a foreign laborer offered no leniency. What once felt like a private mistake was now judged through official records and medical evidence, leaving little space for defense. Court proceedings remained controlled and quiet, but the outcome was severe. The worker lost his job immediately, and his work visa was revoked. Detention turned into a permanent turning point, cutting him off from the life he had tried to build. His family back home was informed through official channels, learning the truth in the most painful way possible. The burden of shame traveled across borders, reaching people who had never stepped foot in Dubai. The boss took decisive action to protect what remained of his reputation. Legal separation followed, and all personal ties were cut. Business interests were reorganized, and public appearances stopped. His life became smaller and more guarded. Trust, once central to his authority, was replaced by suspicion and withdrawal. The woman faced a different form of punishment. While not imprisoned, she lived under constant supervision and medical obligation. Her freedom narrowed as treatment schedules and legal conditions controlled her future. Social isolation deepened, and the luxury that once surrounded her felt meaningless. Justice did not bring closure. It delivered consequences without healing. Each person carried a different form of loss: freedom, health, reputation, and dignity. The judgment marked the end of the case, but also confirmed that some outcomes cannot be reversed, only endured. The legal process unfolded swiftly once the investigation concluded. Authorities acted according to strict laws designed to protect public health and maintain order. Time slowly pushed the case out of public attention, but its impact remained deeply etched into the lives it touched. The city moved on, as it always did, replacing one scandal with another. Yet the damage caused by the hidden affair never truly faded. For the worker, the promise that once brought him to Dubai ended in loss and exile. His journey became a harsh reminder that a single choice can erase years of sacrifice. The dream of lifting his family out of hardship turned into a lesson carried in silence and regret. The boss rebuilt parts of his professional life, but the certainty he once carried was gone. Trust no longer came easily, and the confidence that defined him was replaced by constant caution. His world narrowed, shaped by the fear of reputation lost again. Success continued, but without peace. The woman lived with consequences that time could not erase. Medical treatment became a permanent part of her existence, marking each day with reminders of the past. Social circles never fully returned, and isolation became normal. Wealth and comfort could not undo the reality of illness or the weight of judgment. Her life continued, but under limits she never imagined. The case became a quiet warning shared in private conversations rather than headlines. It exposed how loneliness, secrecy, and carelessness can collide with devastating results. In a city built on rules and appearances, hidden lives often carry the greatest risk. No one involved intended to cause harm, yet harm spread further than anyone expected. What remained was a story of irreversible consequences. Ambition, desire, and silence had combined to destroy futures instead of building them. The scandal served as a reminder that some mistakes do not end when they are discovered. They follow, shape, and define what comes next, long after the truth is known.